And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with the Game Boy Geek.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek. Most of you have probably heard of a game that gets played a ton at conventions called Werewolf. Some people love it, some people like it, some people hate it. Well, guess what? Today, we're going to talk about a new game that's come out from Bezier Games called One Night Ultimate Werewolf. It's a way of playing a stripped-down version of Werewolf from 3 to 10 players, and get this, it plays in just 10 minutes. So you can play this thing 6 times in 1 hour, and you'll probably want to play it 6 or 5 or at least 4. You'll never just play it once, trust me. So it's a stripped-down version of Werewolf. It plays quickly, there's different roles. Let's take a look and see what this is all about, and I'll see you on the other side. Well, here's One Night Ultimate Werewolf getting ready to be set up for 5 players. Now, there's always 3 more tiles than players because there's going to be 3 in the middle. And there's some suggestions on what to do for beginner games, but you can really put in any of the roles in any organization that you want. But this is the suggested setup for a beginner game for 5 people. And we have, as you can see, there's 3 different people. There's the villager, there's 2 werewolves, there's a robber, a troublemaker, and seer. And so what would happen is these would get shuffled up, and nobody would get to see what's going on, and they would get shuffled and shuffled, and then when they get dealt out. Now, as it gets said, everyone gets to look at their own card. 3 in the middle don't get looked at the beginning, so everyone knows who they are. And then over here we have a little token of each of the people. And these tokens also have numbers to say which order the game is going to start with during the night. So there's a night phase and a day phase. During the night phase, everybody's eyes are closed, and certain people are going to do things secretly, and then everyone's going to wake up in the day phase, and that's where all the discussion happens. Now, I highly recommend that you get the iPad app or the Android app. They have iOS and Android. They're free apps. You can put in how long the timer is for the game. It's only played in 10 minutes. And what you do is you get to select which extra characters you might have in the game. So we have the werewolf, the seer, the robber, and the troublemaker. And we play, and we get to hear Eric Summer from the Dice Tower.
Wake up and look for other werewolves.
So now at this point, depending on who's there, people are going to hear certain instructions about what to do. For example, first, the werewolves are going to wake up and see each other, and they're going to know who each other are. Now keep in mind, there may be 2 werewolves out here, there may be 1, or there may be none, depending on these ones that here are in the middle. After they see each other, then everyone closes their eyes, and the seer is next. The seer gets to look at either one person's card from someone else, or they can look at 2 in the middle and see what they are. So they'll gain some information. Everyone else's eyes are closed. Then the robber gets to take someone's card, swap it with their own, and then look and see who they are. And then we have the troublemaker that gets to swap 2 people's tiles. Of course, everybody else's eyes are closed when this is happening, so who you are at the beginning might not be who you are when you wake up, and you might have no clue who you are, which is very interesting. And then the villagers do nothing. So boom, everyone would open their eyes at this point after the basic setup, and the day phase would start, and everybody would just start jockeying for position, starting conversations, and claiming who they think they are. This guy might claim he's a villager. This guy might claim he's a villager. This guy might say, I'm the robber. Okay, well, who did you rob? Well, I took this guy's, and well, what were you before? And all this discussion starts to go on, and it's very interesting where you start jockeying, and different strategies play out as to, should I say who I am right away and be truthful? Should I wait to see what happens? Because a lot of times you might have not started out as a werewolf, but you might end up being a werewolf because the robber or the troublemaker might have swapped with you. And so if you tell the truth right up front who you were at the beginning, even though you're telling the truth, you might get stuck at the end. So it's a very interesting thing. There's nothing to go off of other than pure claiming who you are and claiming who you think you are and letting the truth sort of slip and slide and try to figure out who is what. Now in this case, you know, we have a villager and a seer and a villager and a villager and a werewolf. So this guy would have been all alone. And so at the end of the 10 minutes or 5 minutes or however long you want the game to play, everyone goes, okay, we're going to vote at who's going to die on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. And everybody points at somebody. Now the person who has the most people pointing at them die, and at that point they would flip their card up. These all are kept secret for the whole time. So now if everybody said that and everyone pointed at this guy, he had the majority of them, he would flip his card. If these two together had the same amount of people pointing, they would both flip their cards. If at least one werewolf is killed, the good team wins. Now in this case, everybody that's not a werewolf is on the villager team. So everyone's trying to go against the werewolf. If at least one werewolf dies, the villagers win. If neither werewolf dies, well, the werewolf wins. There could also be no werewolves. Let's say this guy was here at the beginning of the game and this person was a troublemaker and there were no werewolves eventually. If they figured that out by telling the truth and trusting everybody, if everybody points in one direction, then everybody has the same amount. And if there's no werewolves, because they're in the center, and everybody points around to somebody else, then the village team would win then too. So the werewolf team only wins if at least one player is a werewolf and no werewolves were killed. Now there's many other roles here. Let's take the minion for example. He's on the werewolf team. After the werewolves look at each other, they close their eyes, and the werewolves put their thumbs up and the minion opens his eyes and gets to see. So he gets to see who his teammates are, the werewolves, but they don't get to see him. And at the end of the game, if he is killed and no werewolves are killed, then the werewolf team wins, including him. He's sort of taking the sword for the werewolves. If nobody is the werewolves and someone other than him gets killed, then he wins because he's the only one on the werewolf team. Another one is the mason. Whenever you use the mason, you use both masons. And they're on the villager team, and they get to wake up and see each other, but they only get to see one another. And if you don't see another person, then the other mason's in the middle. And both of these masons just know that you are both good and that you're on the villagers team. Now the next one is the insomniac. This insomniac gets to wake up after everyone has done all their shenanigans. They're the last one to wake up, and they get to look at their card again because they never sleep at night. They get to see who they are right before everybody else wakes up, so they have some good information about themselves. The drunk is so drunk he doesn't remember his role. When it's his turn to wake up at night, he swaps cards with one in the middle and doesn't look at it. So when he wakes up, he will have no clue who he is. The next one is the hunter. The hunter, he's on the village team, and if he dies, the person he is pointing to dies as well. All right, the tanner is sort of an interesting one. He's on the village side, but he's not really on their team. He's kind of on his own. He hates his job so much, he wants to be killed. If he dies, he wins. Period. Now, if he dies and no werewolves die, the werewolves do not win because he's not on their team. If the tanner dies and a werewolf dies, then the village team wins along with him. So he's not really a member of either team, so he's a very interesting role. The doppelganger is the most confusing role. They are the first one to wake up. They look at anybody else's card and then they become that role. And then later on when it's that person's time to wake up, they also wake up and do the same thing. So they sort of become, or morph, hence the picture, into one of the other roles that are out there. So as you see, there's lots of roles to choose from, a lot of replayability value, and a good social game that takes 10 minutes to play. All right, well there's One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Now I must admit, I am not a big fan of Werewolf itself. I'm just not. For some reason it doesn't, which is odd because I like the social and deductive aspects of it. For example, The Resistance, or The Resistance Avalon, actually is one of my favorite games in my entire collection. It's probably in my top 3 easily. Love it. And this is in that same vein, but yet it's different enough. It's interesting because yes, there's some basic setups and you can set it up with a couple of villagers and stuff, but I love how you can mix and match all those different roles, and as you play it with new people, it's not hard to learn. It takes a few minutes. You use the basic setup, and every time you play, you add like one more role, and before you know it, you're mixing and matching. And it's really interesting how when you play with the different roles, you think differently because, oh, well, if he was this, he would have done that. And they it's interesting how they kind of interact with each other a little differently. When you play with those different roles and mix them, they're completely different, and it feels like a different game. Now, it's interesting. I really like it. I'm definitely going to keep this one in my collection because I love these types of games. Now, last year they came out with One Night Werewolf. and it was very similar to this, but there weren't nearly as many roles, and it wasn't as interesting, where now I think they almost, if not doubled the amount of roles that are in this game, which really puts the replayability value up. Now, it is a little weird at first when you open your eyes and you have nothing to go on. I'm so used to playing the Resistance Avalon where, hey, you've got information of people voting and people failing missions, and you have some deductive elements. Honestly, a portion of me misses having some sort of deduction element to grab onto, but then again, it's a completely different game from the Resistance. So it's like you open your eyes and people just start claiming who they are. And the really interesting part is the strategy of whether you want to claim who you are right at the front because you know you're not a werewolf, and then later on you figure out that somebody was a robber and they swapped with you and now you are the werewolf. So sometimes telling the truth right off the bat, even though it sounds good, ends up being the worst thing for you sometimes if you become the werewolf. That happened a lot. And then the other thing is, like, so you're always jockeying for position of like, I'm just gonna sit back and wait and see what people say, see if I can catch anybody in a lie, see if I can make sure that nobody's switched me so I can say who I am. And there's a lot of this ebb and flow that goes on, especially when you play it with the same group multiple times, especially in the same setting. So if you play like 3, 4, 5, 6 times in a row, and you see how certain people react. Okay, well that worked for him this time, but it didn't work for him last time. And you see this like meta game or a game inside the game where you're playing off of the past games, and I kind of really love it. It's like callbacks to the past games, and you change your strategies depending on how you see other things play out. And you're not always it's always deciding whether I want to jump in and say who I am or do I want to wait and see what's going on here, but it might make me look suspicious. So overall, I really like the game. It's different enough from Resistance or Resistance Avalon that it can stand on its own. And it's definitely got a place in my collection. If you like social deduction, social awareness type games like this, it's so inexpensive and it's a lot of fun. Takes 10 minutes. You're gonna want to check out One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Hey, one more thing before you go. If you're about to drop a comment on this YouTube page for this video and you're expecting interaction or a personal response from me, I recommend the place to do that is at my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/thegameboygeek, because I don't get notified when YouTube videos get comments on the Dice Tower Network because I don't own the channel. So if you want to interact with me directly, I'll see you at my Facebook page.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.